Today's video is a little bit different. A lot of you who might have been following me for some time will know that I've been running the KHLab or Pacific Sun Core 7 for a really long time, pretty much as long as I've been reefing. It's one of the first bits of cool tech that I ever got for my tank, and it's one of my favorite bits of tech still to this day. I get a lot of questions about it. It's a pretty advanced piece of equipment with a heap of functions and a heap of expandability. You know, at its core, no pun intended, it's a 7-channel dosing pump. But out of the box, it comes with something called the KHLab, which is a module that plugs into it that allows you to use 3 of those dosing heads to perform automated alkalinity testing. Because it's a smart device, it can then control the other 4 heads to do dosing of anything else that you might like to your tank, such as calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and do that in an intelligent way according to the data that the Core 7 is receiving in the form of your alkalinity value, perhaps every hour, every 2 hours, every 6 hours, however frequently you want it to do the tests. But it doesn't stop just there. There are lots of alkalinity testers on the market that have a similar type of paradigm. Most of them don't have 4 additional dosing heads, but most of them can test the alkalinity of your tank and control at least 1 additional dosing head to do automated alkalinity dosing. The Core 7 KHLab separates itself on the market by offering heaps more expandability to the point where it's almost a complete aquarium control system. Some examples of the additional features and modules that you can add onto the Core 7 include additional pH probes, temperature probes, automatic water changes via optional additional DC pumps, optical sensors for an ATO function, and even upgraded modules which are coming soon for things like salinity probes. The entire device, as well as a myriad of other products in Pacific Sun's ecosystem, are all controlled through a cloud platform. So it's a single account on their cloud website that links all of the devices together and allows them to operate in conjunction with one another. For example, my calcium reactor, which I've done plenty of videos on, is the Pacific Sun Calc Feeder Pro model, which means that the controller that comes with that calcium reactor is cloud enabled, and therefore I can set rules in the platform to allow the Core 7 to increase or decrease the dosing speed of my calcium reactor. Similarly, Pacific Sun sells lights which are enabled via their cloud platform, as well as some smart plugs and things like that to be able to turn on or off other equipment, all automatically and all based on rules controlled by a single account. I guess it's a similar or an alternative to, say, the Neptune Apex ecosystem that you might be familiar with, or some other similar ecosystems out there. And while everyone has their favorites, and some people may have used multiple ecosystems, for me it's been the Pacific Sun ecosystem through the majority of my reefing career, and it's the one I'm most familiar with. That's why I get a lot of questions about it, and that's why I'm making this video. This is going to be a very long video, split into multiple parts. So if you're a regular viewer of my channel and this is not the kind of content that you want to watch, maybe give this video a skip. But if you are interested in setting up your own Core 7, perhaps you've just bought one, or you're interested in buying one, my plan for this video is to be the ultimate setup guide for the Pacific Sun Core 7, where we go through all of the steps such as configuring the pH probe, calibrating the pumps, talk through all of the features, some exploration of their cloud platform. It's going to be a big sort of tutorial knowledge dump of all of the things that make this product great and how to use it practically, giving you some visual examples in one place, one big video. I'll put timestamps in the description down below if you want to skip to a section that might be relevant for you if you're in the middle of setting up your Core 7. But yeah, this video is really a reference guide to help anyone out there who has recently acquired or is about to acquire Core 7 from Pacific Sun. Anyway, let's get into it. I think a good place to start is with a visual tour of the device itself. It's pretty simple from the outset. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dosing heads. And there's a screen, and that's the main device. This part here is the KHLab, which connects to the Core 7 via this cable here. And this is where the alkalinity testing is performed. A pH probe goes in here, and then there's two inputs on the top, one for reagent and one for salt water. And then there's an output on the side for the wastewater. For me, I've always just fed the wastewater back into the tank. It's perfectly safe to do so. I've been doing that on my tank for 3 years now, and as you can see, there's really no negative side effects that I've ever noticed from doing that. It's perfectly safe. But if you are paranoid about that kind of thing, you could feed the waste line out to a drain or a waste bottle of some description. What I have here is the reagent. They do two types of reagent, but this is the one I really recommend you get, which is the KH Super Concentrated Reagent. 1 liter of this makes 49 liters, 1 liter of this with 49 liters of RO makes 50 liters of reagent. So one bottle of this is going to last you a really long time. It's just the more economical way to go about it. And as far as competing alkalinity testers on the market go, the math for cost per test with the Pacific Sun KHLab really puts it probably number one. I don't want to say that categorically because I haven't done it, but we're talking cents per test, maybe even less, given how much of this is actually used per test and how many liters of reagent is made for every bottle of this. It's really economical. So for me, I've been running my KHLab doing a test of my tank's alkalinity every 2 hours. That's 12 tests a day. I've been doing that for years, and yeah, the reagent lasts a really long time. Quick look at the back of the device. First port there is a mini USB, and that's used for updating the firmware. Next, we have a big DC jack. That's used for a pump accessory for the ATO function. Then we have 2 optical ports, which can be used for things like optical sensors, again, mostly used for the ATO function. Then there's these 2 DC jacks here. These are used for the auto water change pump accessories. Then we have the antenna for the Wi-Fi. This little hole here is the reset button. If you ever need to factory reset it or you're doing a firmware update, you'll need a pen to stick in there to press that button. This is the power point, or the DC power jack. This is the port that the KHLab is plugged into. Then we have pH probe 1, pH probe 2, and that's not a port, that's nothing. So there you go, that's all the ports on the device. Pretty simple. Obviously it comes with a manual, and so if you ever forget, which one is pH port 1 and which one is pH port 2, you can just check that out in the manual. But yeah, there you go. Cool, so what we're looking at here is the Pacific Sun Cloud. The URL is https://cloud.pacific-sun.eu. The first time you come to it, you'll need to create an account. I'm not going to show you how to do that because it's really basic. As usual, you just give it an email address and set a password and log in, and you'll have your own account. And once you've got an account, you can log into this website from any device, whether it's an Android phone, an iPhone, your laptop, or your smart fridge. It doesn't matter. As long as you've got a web browser, you'll be able to access this dashboard, and all of the features for any Pacific Sun cloud-enabled device can be linked through to this website. Now, if we just go into one of my tanks here, by clicking on it, you can see that you've got a tank dashboard, and the highest level dashboard is going to show you the devices that you have. So I have a Core 7 and I have a Calc Feeder Pro. That's my calcium reactor controller. But I'm also tracking manual data logs for phosphate, nitrate, calcium, and magnesium. So these are all elements that I test on my tank on a periodic basis. And every time I do a test, I come in here and click on the appropriate element and add a new value to show these graphs of over time logging my results for testing these elements manually. You can also do that really easily from my values over here. This is where you define and add your new elements, and add fast value. You could enter them all at once and press save to if you do a full battery of tests and you want to add new values to all of them in one go. going back to the tank dashboard, let's click on the Core 7 because that's obviously the main topic about this video. So clicking on Core 7, you get presented with this dashboard. And you can see that it's telling me here that I have a firmware update available for my Core 7. So these come out from time to time and they'll usually tell you what's changed. So in this one there, it looks like the upgrade in the firmware is to allow your reagent bottle tracking capacity to be up to 5 liters. Scrolling down a bit, this is the main event here. This graph is showing my KH over time. And you can see I can scroll through and look at my exact KH value on any day of the week or time. By default, this is a 7-day outlook. And you can see what the current value is of basically, let's call that 8 DKH. We can see my minimum was 7.6 and my maximum was 8.5, and that's in the last 7 days. We've also got my temperature. Now this is over the last 24 hours, so there's been a little bit of a swing from, we've gone from a high of 26.9 to a low of 26.1. So this looks drastic, but it's only a 1 degree swing in my temperature over the last 24 hours, which is pretty normal on a tank. Usually tanks get their hottest towards the end of the photo period because they've absorbed a lot of heat from your lights over that time, and then they'll cool off overnight. We can see down here that I'm also tracking the dosing on pumps 4, 5, 6, and 7, and for me, that's all of the Reef Anabolics trace elements, so halogen, metals, growth, and boron. It's telling me that they're all empty. They're not actually all empty. I just was too lazy to enter the bottle capacities in there, so the Core 7 doesn't actually know how much I've got left in each of those bottles, but that's just purely because I didn't tell it how much the bottles had when I first hooked them up. Scrolling down here, you can see my pH. The tank's pH is currently sitting at 8.1, and this pH, that's pH probe 2. pH probe 1, that's the one that's in the core, the KHLab, is a bit lower. That's normal for it to be in that range because of the reagent is acidic. So there we go. Now if I click on details against the KHLab section, you can see all of my past tests and a more exploded view of that graph. The blue line indicates pH, so you can see that swings a little bit day to day, which is normal. Again, this is a 7-day outlook, but I could change this to be, 30 days or just today or whatever you want. You can also just do a custom range to look up past values. And then if we look down here, we can see what has actually happened with every test. So at 8:30 this morning, it read 8.07 kH and did nothing as a result of that. Then at 10:25, it read 8.35 kH, and that's getting a little bit higher. I think my set point is for it to react is if the KH gets above 8.2, and that's what it did, is it decreased the speed of my calcium reactor by a little bit because the KH crept up a bit. And then you can see at 12:26, it did another test, 8.19, so that's less than 8.2 and inside my acceptable range, so it did nothing. And then again, it tested at 2:25 at 8.04 and did nothing as well. Now the next area I want to show you is the timeline, and this gives you a history of everything that the Core 7 is doing throughout the day. So every time it takes a pH reading, every time it adjusts your alkalinity or does a test, every time it doses through one of the channels, it records it in here. So you're always able to check up on what it's been doing and what's been happening. Beneath that, we have the channel settings. This is where you go in to configure each of the dosing heads. Now you'll see that it starts for me with channel number 4. That's because channel 1, 2, and 3 are removed from this screen when the KHLab is enabled, because those channels are exclusive to the KHLab when it's enabled and are configured in the KHLab settings, which we'll get to in a little bit. So I only have 4 additional channels available to me when using the KHLab, and for me right now you can see that they're dosing a certain amount, in this case the Reef Halogen 3 ml a day, once a day, first dosage at 9:37 and there's then the additional options here for tracking the bottle that it's dosing from, doing a manual dose, or calibrating the pump, as well as being able to turn off the dosing pump on certain days of the week. So all of those settings are then repeated for channel 5, channel 6, and channel 7. I've got them all the same pretty much, except just dosing at slightly different times, just offsetting them all by a few minutes. But because they're being dosing trace elements, I just do that once a day, and it's only a small amount. But if it was, say, being used for dosing my alkalinity, it would perhaps look more like doing 24 doses a day or 12 doses a day, and it would be dosing probably more than 3 mil. But yeah, it's very flexible, very easy to control your dosing in here. The next thing would be the ATO settings. It's essentially an on-off switch, but you can control certain things as to whether you're using an optical sensor, whether you want the alarm to be enabled, what the delay is from the sensor detecting that it needs to do a water change, do a top off, and when it actually starts the top off. And you can also enable some beeping things as well in here. The next one is then the automatic water change. Again, I don't have this accessory plugged in right now, but if I did, I would turn it on. You set whether you're using dosing pumps or the DC pumps, what your capacity is, and how much you want to change per week. And then you can calibrate the pumps over here really easily, just using these test buttons and the calibration settings here. The KHLab settings, as you can see here, it's attached. The first test is at 9 a.m. It does 12 tests a day. My minimum target is a DKH of 7.8. My maximum is 8.2. And then my target is 8. That's pretty much all you need to set, other than telling it how big your water capacity is, and it's able to do the rest automatically. Now, you can have it therefore auto control channels 4, 5, 6, and 7 if you want to. That would be if you want the KHLab to dose your alkalinity and even calcium and magnesium automatically based on attempting to maintain an alkalinity of whatever you set in your target. There are some other options in here as well, such as being able to do a flush of the system and clear out the history. You can track how much reagent you have here if you enter a value here and tell it that you've refilled it. You can enable a sunset mode where it reduces the amount that is dosed after hours. And you can also control the stirrer speed of the KHLab. Linked devices is where you can link your Core 7 to other devices, such as their smart power plugs, and in my case, the Calcfeeder Pro. So here you see I've got this all turned on, which means the Calcfeeder Pro is being fed the data from the Core 7 in the form of temperature, pH, and KH, and the Core 7 is controlling the flow or the dosing from the Calcfeeder automatically. This is why I don't have automatic control turned on for pumps 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's because I have the auto control here turned on for the calcium reactor Calcfeeder Pro. Finally, the last area here is the system settings config area, and this is where you'll come in to do much of your setup. In here is the KHLab wizard. This is where you'll come to do your initial setup, and it's a step-by-step guide. It gives you instructions all the way along in terms of calibrating each of the first 3 pumps, and you just simply follow the instructions to go through and weigh how much is being dosed out of each pump, enter the values into this wizard screen, and continue through to the next step, and it'll walk you through the process of calibrating the salt water in, the reagent fluid in, and the wastewater out pumps to get yourself fully up and running. Alright, in this section I'm going to show you how to calibrate the pH probes on the KHLab. So there's a couple of things you'll need. First is your pH probe, and I have it sitting in a glass of RO water. When using a brand new pH probe, it is good practice to just let the pH probe rest in RO water for 10 or 15 minutes after unpacking it and unboxing it. Sometimes they get a little bit dry in shipping, or the little bottle that's often included on the bottom of them can be dislodged and some of that liquid can seep out. So you just might need to rehydrate the probe a little bit. You also want to wash up that potassium solution that they've been soaking in. So just soaking it in RO for 20 minutes before starting is good practice. You're also going to need the 2 calibration fluids that come with the KHLab. There's calibration fluid pH 4 and pH 7. Finally, just have some paper towel ready just to very gently dry the probe between each step. I've plugged my pH probe into the Pacific Sun Core 7. It's the port on the closest to the middle is pH probe 1, and the port closest to the left, or in my case the bottom of the unit, is pH probe 2. Now, one thing to note, if you are adding a pH probe or only replacing one of the pH probes, you do need to recalibrate both of them because the calibration will swing dependent on whether there is 1 or 2 probes plugged into the unit. So they both need to be calibrated at the same time. All right, let's get started. So here we are on the dashboard of the Pacific Sun Cloud system. And you can see that while my KH has been quite stable for a long period of time, according to this graph, recently there's some quite sharp peaks and troughs. This is a really good indication of a pH probe being at the end of its life, and hence the reason why I'm replacing the pH probe in this instance. For me, I use fairly cheap pH probes that I buy on eBay for about $30 each, sometimes even cheaper, and they last about 6 months. I'm aware that there are more expensive pH probes that will last upwards of a year, so it's up to you whether you want to replace it more frequently and buy a cheaper pH probe, or replace it less frequently and buy a more expensive one. But when you start seeing instability like this, it's time to replace it. So the process is to go to System Configuration down here, pH Monitor / Calibration, this button here. Then on this screen, what you're going to see is both of your pH probes. If one of them is not connected, there'll be no data available and you can ignore it. So in my case, I only have pH probe 1 connected, and it's saying that the pH is 7.68 right now, which we can ignore because we've not yet calibrated the probe. So what we're going to do is click the Calibrate button in the top right-hand corner against pH probe 1. And at this point, you have the option of doing it the manual method or the wizard method. I would strongly recommend following the wizard. It just makes it so much easier. So it gives you the clear instructions to immerse the pH probe in the calibration fluid pH 4, and then press the start button when the probe is in the fluid. So let's do that. So taking our pH calibration fluid 4, unscrew the lid, peel away the protective seal. I retain these, so I put them back inside the lid. They really help keep the fluid sealed when you are finished with it and increase its lifespan. Now we'll take our pH probe. I'm just going to gently dry off the RO water using the paper towel. And you just want to dab the glass bead very gently with the corner of paper towel just to soak up any excess liquid. You don't want to rub the glass bead. And then you simply put it in the bottle of pH 4 liquid, give it a little shake to make sure there's no air bubbles trapped on it. Simple as that. Now that the probe is immersed in the calibration fluid, we can press the start button. And it's simply a 5-minute timer. And we're just going to wait for this to count down, and once it's finished, the probe will take a calibration reading of the pH solution. Alright, now that the timer has counted down, we're given a button to calibrate the probe. So just give the probe a little bit of a stir, and then press the button and you should hear a beep. Now from here the process is identical All we need to do is put the probe into RO water and start another timer. This is to just reset it back to neutral. So I'm going to put the probe back into that glass of RO water, and I'm going to seal up my calibration fluid. So we take the probe out of the calibration fluid, pop it into some RO again, seal up our calibration fluid, and we're just going to sit it in this RO for a couple of minutes. The 3-minute timer is counting down over on the computer. And once that's finished, I'm sure you can guess what comes next, but we're going to repeat the process with a 5-minute timer sitting in the pH 7 and then press the calibration button. And once you've done the calibration against 4 and 7, calibration is complete, and we will put the probe back into the KHLab. All right, as you can see, we're going to put the probe into the pH 7 and start the timer again. Taking pH 7, remove the seal, just dry the RO water off the probe and very gently dab any excess and place it into the pH 7 calibration fluid. All right, and now as the timer runs down for the pH 7 calibration fluid, we're going to get the button that we press here to calibrate it now. And our pH probe is now calibrated. All that's left to do is take the probe out of the pH 7 fluid, put it back in RO, put the lid back on the pH 7 fluid, and now we can put the probe back into the KHLab. So I'm just doing this one-handed, but it slides in there. You want to slide it all the way down until it's about that far in, about in line with the tip, which I've got on about a 1 centimeter extension like that. That's about how far in you want it. You don't want it touching the bottom of the unit, so as you can see, when it's inside the unit, it's going to be sitting about there. And we can put it back together. I'll put that down properly, it's just going to take 2 hands. Alright, so calibrating the pumps on the Core 7 is really, really easy. The main pumps that you need to calibrate are the first 3, being the salt water in, the reagent in, and wastewater out. It's important that these 3 pumps are calibrated accurately, because that will have an impact on the accuracy of the KHLab's alkalinity testing. The other 4 pumps are typically used for your dosing purposes, so whilst it's good to calibrate them and have them be accurate, you know, a 1 mil drift here or there is not going to make much difference, given that they're most likely being used just for dosing fairly large volumes of alkalinity, magnesium, calcium, or trace elements. But where you want really accurate test results on your KH, it's very important to have particularly pumps 1 and 2 really accurately calibrated. Thankfully, the Pacific Sun Cloud site makes that really, really easy. In order to do it, you simply follow the wizard. So you come into System Settings, then you go Start KHLab Wizard, and there's essentially a step-by-step guide that it will take you through the full process of calibrating each pump. Now, obviously, I have it set up right now here on a table, and this glass of water is representing the tank or the sump where I would be drawing salt water from. And I've just got everything here in front of me for the purposes of filming this video. But on your tank, you should perform this calibration with the Core 7 actually set up on your fish tank and all the tubing runs being in their final position, because the length of the tubing will have an impact on the calibration. So this is just for illustrative purposes right now. Also, what you're going to need to perform the calibration is this test setup here that comes with the Core 7, comes with a set of scales, a measuring vial, and this holder here, because that's what's going to allow us to really easily calibrate. So the first thing we want to do is turn on the scale with the measuring cylinder on top of it and press the T button here to reset it to 0. Nemo, no. Sorry about that, technical issues associated with cat. So yeah, you want to press the T button here after you've turned the scale on, and that resets it to 0. Then what you want to do is connect the silicon tubing that normally goes into the KHLab here for pump 1, which is the water in. You want to disconnect it from the KHLab and connect it to the second port on here, which is the one without the green tip on it, so just the open one. Simple as that. Then you just want to press start on the screen, and you can see the pump turns on, and all we're doing right now is priming the line. So you just want to leave it running. We can see water running through the line, and as soon as water starts coming out, you press stop. Now we can empty the vial. Just have an empty glass here off shot, what I'm going to use is just emptying the vial. So the vial's empty again. Put it back. Make sure it's reset to 0. Press next on the screen, and this is the calibration screen. So we have a fully primed line. We have the scale set to 0. This file here empty, and all you need to do is press the calibrate button. And as you can see, it's now pumping water into the vial, and we just have to wait for it to stop automatically. It'll just take a few seconds. It's going to pump approximately 70 grams of water. Now, it might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less. It doesn't really matter, because what the final value ends up being will be recorded on the scale, and that's what we enter here on the interface in the website. All right, so the value recorded here on the scale is 60.07. Now, we just typed that directly into the website on this first box here, and all we need to do after that is empty the water, reset the scale, tear it, or calibrate it back to 0, and press the calibrate button again. And it's going to do the same process, refill the vial. Now you essentially repeat this 5 times, because there's 5 boxes on the interface, and once you've entered values in all 5 boxes, it uses them as an average over the 5 runs to get a really accurate calibration. There we go, it ran the second one now, and it was 59.77. So you should see that all of your values are fairly consistent, no matter what number they are. And once you've done it 5 times and you've got those 5 values in there, we just press the save button. Now, I'm only going to do 2 right now for the purposes of speed, but you would want to run this 5 times to get 5 values. So I'm going to save my calibration. There we go. I'm going to empty the water out of the cup. Tear the scale. And then finally, we're going to run the check. So this will be, for you, the 6th time that you run it. And this is to test the accuracy. So this time, it's going to run based on the calibration values that we've been entering. And what we want to see after this run is that it's really close to 70 mil, if not exactly 70 mil, because the pump has now been calibrated off the previous 5 runs. And so yeah, that's how we do the calibration. So once you complete the process, the test result should be in the range of 69.2 to 70.8 mil, that's plus minus 1% of measurement accuracy, and you're good to go. If the test is not returning a result inside that 1% of measurement accuracy, you might have done something wrong. Maybe you recorded a value wrong, or you forgot to reset the scale properly at one time. That's okay, just do it again. Take your time with it until you get that calibration spot on. Let's see how accurate it is off this final run, bearing in mind that I only gave it 2 values with which to calibrate. Boom, and the value is 70.02. So that calibrated really, really accurately off just 2 values, but as I said, I recommend you do 5. And yeah, it's as simple as that. You simply then go next on the screen here, and it will walk you through the process. The next one to do will be pump 3, which is the one here that I have upside down. That's for your wastewater. Once you've calibrated that, you'll then do pump 2, which is the reagent one here. That one's a little bit different. It's a slower pump with smaller tubing. So it won't be doing 70 mil. It'll be using 10 mil approximately for each calibration. But just follow the steps as written on the website and you should be good to go. All right, so I think that's enough for this video. It's probably about 40 minutes long at this point. But as I said right at the beginning, the Core 7 is an amazing product. It has heaps of capability and heaps of expandability. Today I've just covered the basics in terms of an overview of the device, a bit of a tour of the cloud, how to calibrate the pH, how to calibrate the pumps. But if there's anything specific that you want me to do a guide on in relation to the Core 7 or the KHLab, put it down in the comments down below. If anyone's still watching at this point, put a thumbs up as well on the video, subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. I think if you got through the whole of this video, it probably means you're either a Core 7 owner already looking for a guide, or you're definitely putting a lot of research into which of these types of products you should buy. And hopefully this gives you enough insight into the Pacific Sun world of their smart aquarium devices, which are led by the Core 7 and the KHLab, to convince you to pick one of them up. I strongly recommend it. As I said, I've been running it for over 3 years now. But yeah, any questions, put them in the comment down below. Hope you enjoyed this incredibly long video. My name is Marcus, and you've been watching the Reef Nerd YouTube channel. Bye for now.